6, consideration of those remedies, please turn off electronic devices. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Shoup?
Here.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mrs. Donato? Here. Mrs. Jenkins? Here. Mr. Augustine?
Here.
Mr. Fodor?
Present.
Mr. Hack?
Here. Can I have a second? I need a second to accept our attendance. It says it right here.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Not in favor? The ayes carry. Agenda approval. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? The ayes carry. Invocation tonight will be given by Katie Jenkins, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
I'm gonna do something a little different tonight, Paul. Bear with me. As many people may have heard, yesterday, Painesville City Police Department lost Lieutenant Mark Wagner. He has been with our department for 12 years, and it is a grave loss that we suffer at this time. If we could take a moment to please respect his memory. Almighty God, we pray to you in heaven up above. Watch over our dear police officers and firefighters and protect them with your love. Please guide them as they keep us safe both day and night, and hold them firmly in your care should danger come their way. Give them true strength and courage as they will serve till duty's end. And one more thing to ask, dear Lord, protect their family and their friends. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion for the minutes for the regular meeting from April 15th?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from April 15th.
Second.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Abstain.
Mrs. Donato?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Abstain.
Mrs. Shoup?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes. Public comments. We now will recognize our visitors. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. When called upon, please use the podium. Clearly state your name and address into the microphone and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any dialogue must be conducted through me as President of Council, although your comments and questions can be addressed to the Council, Administration, and full. Anybody would like to speak? Committee reports. We have a BZA.
Good evening. At the April 18th BZA meeting, we heard only one of the 3 items that were on the agenda. Was a swimming pool on North Ashwood to be located closer to the property line than would normally due to the small size of the lot. There was a tabled request for a property on Newell, and the applicant on East Erie Street was a no-show.
Any questions? Thank you. Safety Committee appointment.
Yes, we had several individuals submit interest in serving on the safety committee. We only had one available seat, and we have requested to appoint Ed Kopchak of Stonehaven Drive to the position. I believe he confirmed that he's still interested in the position. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Ed Kopchak to the safety committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Congratulations. Excellent. Legislation. If you wish to comment on legislation, you must request to do so at this time. Those make such a request will then call upon after the reading. Any dialogue must be conducted through me as President of Council. Although your comments or questions can be addressed to the Council or the administration. If you do choose to speak, please come up to the microphone and give me your address and your name. We will go for ordinance number 1. 2, resolution number 3, resolution number 4, resolution number 5. We'll move on to ordinance number 1, third reading.
An ordinance repealing chapter 1139, non-conforming uses, structures, and lots of the Painesville Code of 1998 and declaring an emergency.
Good evening. Matter is on the third reading. This matter was heard at our planning commission work session on March 14th. Our planning commission gave a favorable recommendation on the proposed language changes for chapter 1139, which deals with non-conforming uses, structures, and lots. This particular ordinance is for repealing ordinance number 2, which is the enacting of the new wording. We felt that it was better to just create a whole new chapter with new language. Chapter 1139 provides a mechanism for existing uses, structures, and lots to continue even if subsequent amendments are made to our existing zoning regulations. The new language takes the approach that it would be better to allow non-conforming use to exist if it is maintained than allowing it to deteriorate. Again, this is the third reading, so if there are any questions, I can answer.
Yes.
So my question really isn't related to the first ordinance, but the second, but I realize that we can't repeal the first ordinance unless, so I'm just going to ask this question before you can answer it. In the applicability of the ordinance, it states that the burden of establishing that a nonconformity lawfully exists shall be on the owner of the land which the purported nonconformity is located. And then lower in the legislation, it talks about certificates that will be given once they'll get issued a certificate of compliance once they submit evidence to the department. So starting, if this legislation passes, starting when it becomes effective, what's the process for getting people already having nonconformities these certificates?
The idea was to regulate them through our vacant property ordinance. So as we are aware of non-conforming uses currently being occupied, if they become vacant, that 12-month period that they are no longer used, they lose their non-conformity. So we are documenting all non-conforming uses. Then if the vacant property becomes an issue, then we would give them the opportunity to document the use as they would like to keep it existing by giving us a documentation, pretty much the same as we do with our vacant properties. And then we would verify it and then give them a certificate indicating that they are allowed to continue the non-conforming use in that manner.
So you don't envision wanting these certificates to be on file from everybody that's currently in this non-conforming use state?
Right, I don't believe we have the manpower to do that, so we would be doing it as they come up. So as properties are being listed, we do get called regularly from realtors asking if they're pre-existing non-conforming, if they've been grandfathered. So at that time, it would then allow us to get that documentation and then give a certificate.
Any other questions?
Well, that, I couldn't find it, maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but that certificate can't, if you have a certificate and I buy your property, it's not my certificate now. Can it be passed down?
Yeah, it would go with the
It
property.
would go with the property.
Yes, it was to lessen the burden of property owners that are in as an example, if I have a house and it's zoned multifamily and it's, it's being used as if it's zoned as single family and it's being used as a multifamily. If I have 5 units and it's already been 5 units, now it's single family, I can't continue to use it in that manner if it loses its non-conformity. So we're looking to kind of soften the regulation to help at least keep these properties in good condition and allow them to continue as long as they're kept up. If the example of the 5-unit apartment, if I can't keep it and I haven't had occupants in there for a year, it's just going to be left to decay and not being taken care of, and then it becomes a blight on the neighborhood. So that was the thought process in allowing them to continue that.
So then that brings up another question for you, which would be, so if I was purchasing this property that I thought I could rehabilitate as a 5-unit apartment, just say, and I couldn't prove as the new owner that it had a approved non-conformity in the past, how would I prove that it had if I don't have any of the legal documentation? So only the city would have this list of. So I guess I'm wondering, why does the burden of proof have to be, if the city has documented all the non-conformities and we're aware of what's out there, why is the burden of proof being put on the new owner of the building or something like that? Why are we going that way in the language?
So that they can show documentation that it had been used recently in the past, let's say the 12 months, and now it's 13 months, and they've lost their nonconformity, as an example. If they have utility records showing that there were 5 units in there that have been used continuously up into that 13 months ago, then we may not be able to have all that documentation.
But how would the new owner have it, is what I'm asking? How would a brand new owner have documentation from a previous owner's history? And that's what's concerning me about this. Just that one piece is, and what I'm afraid of is, just to take it one step further, is now I have a complex that's been divided into these 5 apartment units, but I can't buy it as an apartment because I can't prove that it had this non-conforming status within the last 12 months. So now I have the burden of making it into a single-family dwelling, just throwing that one out there. And then I guess I'm afraid that those properties then are just going to sit and not be occupied by anybody, because why would I buy that if I can't prove it? And how would I be able to prove it if I didn't own it back then? You see where I'm going?
Well, wouldn't if you were to buy this investment program or property, and you would do, you do a cost analysis, like you would figure out if there's 5 units, these are things I would do to make sure it was profitable to buy. And then if that was the case, that owner, or the real estate agent would come up with what those apartments were going for to make it worth your while, because you're gonna wanna make 30% of this unit over a year. I mean, I don't know, man, I think. If I was gonna buy something like that, I would do,
And
I could do an analysis.
And that's my problem, Paul. Then you wouldn't buy it. And so it would continue to sit vacant. Because if you did that analysis and you couldn't buy it, because it couldn't be profitable that way, I'm just afraid this is going to have a backlash that we're not expecting because of the way that it's written, and putting that burden of proof on the person who purchased or wants to purchase the property.
Well,
So
you should have to advertise it too, or to let people know that with the realtors, that this could be an issue, or.
Yes, then we would do that. And I think in the final section, 113907, it talks about certificates of compliance for nonconformities. And item B, it does say the property owner shall submit sufficient evidence to verify that such lot, building, structure, or use was lawfully created or established in accordance with the zoning regulations in existence at that time. So we would work with anyone to go through our documentation, but there are incidences that we've come across where properties were not divided legally and they were split up. You may have basement units that have shown up, and somebody not knowing that that wasn't allowed as a foreseeable buyer may buy it thinking that it's a lawful 5-unit, where in the fact it's actually only 4 units. So it kind of, it helps us to help them become more educated about what the zoning regulations are, that they're buying a piece of property and what it's legally allowed to be used for. That was the intent of going that route by creating these certificates, so we wouldn't have people purchasing properties that they were told by the realtor or by the property owner wanting to sell it that, yes, you can buy this and you can have these 5 units, and then they buy it, then they come and do the research, and the 5 units were never documented, and so that we're just trying to get a handle on those types of situations.
So wouldn't it be hopeless, though, to start the process with having people who already are in that position to have these certificates and get them on file so that we have that evidence already?
Yes, I would agree with that. We do have documentation, I think, looking back when we were doing the non-conforming rezoning, there are a total of 7,345 total parcels that are total in our city, and of that, there are 643 of them that are non-conforming. So that's a big chunk of non-conforming parcels.
So like you said, I understand we don't have the staff to do
Right.
it, but then again, I'm afraid of the backlash for
Right.
the new buyer, and I think we're going to be getting into some of that murky stuff that we got into with the vacant property legislation, because we didn't think this process
Yes.
through to that extent.
So how would you handle it today? No change. In Laura's example, if there's a basement unit that we don't know about and now it comes to life, how would you theoretically handle that?
We do it in that manner. We require that the property owner submit sufficient evidence showing that that was a legal unit by doing the background checks on what we have on file in the Community Development Department, what the utility records show, what was done through utilities as far as new meter installs, how many water hookups, and things of that nature. So we do a lot of background check to find out what was legally allowed to be there prior to it being sold. So if anybody wants to buy it, usually the realtors do call, and then we ask them to submit a request in writing, and we give them the zoning verification, and then if they want to challenge what we say is then, we pull more information. So, but it is on them to kind of go through
Today, it would
and
be
give
so
us.
different really than what it is today, except for issuing certificates, is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
Right, just so that we have something on file on our end that they are legally allowed to continue that use.
But we're softening the length of time, we're softening the, I don't want to say length of time, but we're softening the blow.
The approach,
The
yes,
approach, sure.
for a non-conforming, yes.
And just to answer, in the last 10 years, I've had one, that I recall. And typically, what you're going to find is the ones that are non-conforming show as 4-bedroom units where they legally converted it, and then they added a 5th unit in it where they can't show us where they ever got documentation or any permits to create that 5th unit. So it gives them an opportunity to present information in that way. Typically, to become non-conforming, it has to be vacant for over a year. If you're talking 2, 3, 4, one of the for a 5-unit building to be non-conforming, that means 4 of the units have to be vacant and only 1 of them occupied. You see what I'm saying? If it's in a single-family residential area. So basically, it's providing the ability for the person who purchased that property to keep it conforming. Typically, I understand what you're saying, why do we put the burden on them? They have to initiate it somewhere, and a lot of times they will come to us and ask us for information because we do have the information. So we will provide various information that they have. We have the cards, as far as when they've converted the units, things of that nature in our office. So it's really on them to come to us, and we assist them and show them what we have on record. We can work with them, they can go over to utilities and pull the utilities information, those types of things for those units. However, I think it's on them in some cases where they never got permits in the past to show that it is a conforming unit, that it was built up to the standards that we require within the city. So, that's really what we're looking at. For duplexes, it can become non-conforming if only 1 unit is occupied and the other unit isn't occupied for a year, which has happened, on occasions. In that case, it's very easy for them to come to us in this situation, because we have made people convert it to a single-family residential unit, because that's what our ordinance requires. Now they can come to us and say, listen, I didn't have the money to make the repairs. It was built as a duplex. I want it to remain a duplex, and that's where this ordinance really comes in and assists people that, where they don't have to change it to a single-family dwelling. They can keep it as a duplex and fix it up and recover the cost, some additional costs. So that, we really lessened, their ability to have to go through a lengthy process to convert it, to a conforming unit. And if you have five apartments in a building and have to convert it back to single family, it's very difficult to do.
Right, that's what my
Right.
point is, so.
In this case, even though they may lose a unit because it wasn't built according to the code, or they did not get a permit, they still may have 4 units that they will be able to generate revenue from. Now, typically, do they come to us? Yes. Everybody who is an investor knows to basically check with community development, and each one of the title agents calls us to ask, is this conforming or hasn't been vacant for over a year? We give that information up front, and then they're able to address it before they actually close.
So at this point in time, in order for someone to get a meter for either electric or water, they have to have a permit before either one of those divisions will actually put a meter on a structure.
Yes.
So if this five unit with the phony unit in the bottom that wasn't approved is now a 4 unit, if that individual, the new owner says, well, I'd like to make it a 5 unit, could they then get permits to rehab it and have you guys come out and look at it and inspect it, or is it dead?
They would have to go through the process to have it approved for 5.
But that's what I'm saying, I mean, if they were gonna, whatever was supposed to happen, and the rehabs that they were gonna need to make, if they were willing to make it, they could make it back into that 5/5 unit and get it, by going through the process of writing something on your thing. Okay.
Did the individual that made it bottom, did they have meters for the 5th unit?
That was actually an
We're just
example.
expecting.
Yes.
So the answer is no, they didn't.
Again, I thought there was a case before
No.
BZA that,
So don't, again, all non-conforming things that are initiated have to come in front of the BZA and they have to be authorized by the city. True. I mean, if they're doing it legally.
If they're doing it legally, yes.
Okay. So at that time, whenever the BZA issues a non-conforming, can they create a certificate at that point so that it's on file?
Yes.
And then the certificate is there and then that doesn't,
Yes, typically with variance requests, they go with the property, so yes, it would be the same, yes.
the other thing is, I just want to mention that in most times, and I guess part of me is just thinking constitutionally that somebody has to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I broke the law. In this case, we're asking people to prove that they didn't break the law. Do you know, or break the ordinance. So I find that, yeah.
That's when you're comparing a criminal situation
Okay.
to a civil situation. And this is much like what would transpire in a civil lawsuit. The person who's making the claim, this person who's claiming that they have non-conforming use has the burden to show that that in fact is the situation.
I just, for the record, would like to see the city make some effort to get these certificates on file, other ways than waiting until we have an issue to get these certificates on file. And if it's convenient to consider that, I know we don't tell you guys how to operate, we pass the legislation, but I would appreciate that because I can just, like I said, see this being a big backlash that we're not expecting in a contentious situation that's already existing.
In fact, if I could just point out for a moment, since we have a long history dealing with non-conforming use, that it's a two-way sword. And what you say is absolutely correct about the person who, you know, if they can't convert it, if they can't utilize it as a 4-unit apartment building, they don't want it. But on the other hand, the property, let's say it's in a single-family zone, and there's a house next to it, and the person wants to sell the house as a single-family residence, and they can't sell the house because it's next to a 5-unit apartment. And then, so they come in and they ask, they want the zoning changed, because now they can't sell it as a single family, and now you've got a big zoning issue. And that's why, for the longest time, communities were very much towards eliminating all non-conforming uses. Because when you put a non-conforming use in a certain situation, more often than not, it causes problems. If you have a business who's next to a house, that business at some point is going to cause noise that the homeowner is not going to like. So but that has softened over the years based on the courts kind of swinging around in terms of property rights of individuals. And they've leaned more away from the municipalities and more towards the concept that the property owner has a right to use that property. So there's a blend in there of competing priorities, but the courts have sort of shifted more towards the property owner as opposed to what they used to. So that's kind of where we're standing now, and I think this legislation sort of absorbs that attitude of the court. It kind of makes it easier, quite frankly, for a person to pursue a non-conforming use. That's my opinion. But
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You've got a legitimate argument.
I'll get a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, ordinance 1 passed. Ordinance number 2, third reading.
An ordinance enacting Chapter 1139 of the Painesville Code of 1998 relating to non-conforming lot structures and uses and declaring an emergency.
Move to adopt?
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yeah.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, ordinance number 2 passed. Resolution number 3, first reading.
Resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to apply for and accept financial assistance from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Natural Works Program to complete the city dog park and declaring an emergency.
So we want to apply for an insurance grant to complete the dog park. We're requesting $40,000, $25,000 for fencing, $5,000 for the key fobs, and $10,000 for screening, because that's what we promised the neighborhood that we would make sure it's screened off. It's due June 1st, so we need to keep our application.
Any questions, concerns? I get a motion.
Move to suspend?
Second.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Denalo?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution number 3 passed. Resolution number 4, first reading.
Resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to apply for and accept funding from Lake County fiscal year 2019 Community Block Grant Program for the Watson Street water line replacement and declaring an emergency.
Good evening.
The Watson Water Line. What we're looking to do and ask you tonight is to consider this resolution. The city of Painesville became eligible through CDBG funding for infrastructure projects. Part of their plan was to have a shovel-ready project, and we had this ready to do. So they're looking at a $74,000 grant towards this Watson Waterline project. And then next year, I know Leanne has Watson Street as part of the paving project. This road is the road that's next to Versus Michael Engineers. It runs between Jackson and Menor. So it's a real good opportunity for us. It's about 50% of the cost. The total cost of the project is $163, almost $174,000. The city's part is $89,000. We made the application, Leanne's made the application to this project. Lake County approached us, so it's in their hands right now. I'm asking for your blessing.
Questions?
Is this best to pass sooner rather than
Yes.
later?
Very good question.
Move to suspend.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution number 4 passed. Resolution number 5, first reading.
So ordered.
A resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 2.5 mil tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation and requesting Lake County Auditor to certify the total current tax valuation of the city and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by the police levy and declaring an emergency.
This is the first piece of, two pieces of legislation required to put a levy on the ballot. This is requesting a 2.5 mil levy. The Finance Committee recommended this. The 2.5 mil levy will bring just over $608,000 in annually, and it'll cost a yearly homeowner who owns a $100,000 house just over $87 for the year. We're asking that this gets approved on first reading. This allows us to go to the county, they'll certify the amounts, and then should you approve this one, we'll bring back the other piece of legislation, and that can go through reads.
Questions, concerns? Any motion?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Mr. Augustine?
Yes.
Mr. Fodor?
Yes.
Mrs. Shute?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Donello?
Yes.
Mrs. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes, resolution number 5 passed. We have no unfinished business, new business, nuisance animals.
So I got an email from an individual in my ward that has a problem with her neighbor feeding the deer. And she had said in her email to me that there are times when there's 30 to 40 deer in there. And I mean, I've had 6 or 7 in my backyard, and I was kind of wondering if that's an exaggeration. But I didn't say anything, I just, in my head, I was thinking that. So I had passed out to all of you a picture that she forwarded to me without me asking, and I counted, and there's 17 of them right there, and she says in her email that it is half the herd. So anyway, I did ask Valerie to do some research on what other cities do, how they handle their nuisance animals, and she reached out, and there are 3, as I said in my email to y'all, there are 3 communities that responded to her. That's not necessarily the only 3 communities that have something in their legislation, but 3 communities responded back to her, Menor, Lyndhurst, and Mayfield Heights. And 2 had it just as in the ordinance, they listed the deer as a nuisance animal. They didn't change anything about their ordinance. And then one of them, and I don't recall which one it was pretty specific, that they were really down on having deer, and they were very specific in it. And I just kind of, the resident asked me if there's anything we can do, and I, as I always say, well, I'm one of 7. So I just brought this up to you, and I just thought maybe we could discuss it. I've had phone calls about people losing their tulips because the deer are out there, but, you know, nothing along these lines. And You know, as I looked at the picture that I passed out, that truly is, if you think about it, and there's 18 in that picture, and they're making a mess with their feet and with everything else. I could understand why that would be very aggravating to someone to have their neighbor feeding them corn and bread and so on and so forth. And she said this particular picture is they're waiting out there to be fed, so the guy hasn't even come out to feed them yet. So, anyway, that's what I have. I just thought we could discuss it, or at least be able to go back to the resident and say, no change, nothing's happening, or whatever.
I guess I'm open to discussion, but one of the things I wonder is what constitutes a nuisance. So this is the first problem I've heard about from one resident. Does that make the deer now a nuisance? I was reading the ordinances you sent, and I think it was Mayfield Heights or something like that that had a pretty thorough ordinance.
Right.
But then are stray cats also a nuisance? You know, at what point, like, that's kind of the curious question that I have. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm open to discussing it. But then the other thing we would think about is if they weren't feeding them, would they eat more tulips? And then is the nuisance bigger to the community? You know, it's like, there's just a lot of questions.
And you know the they had their shooting program for a while there. I don't know if they still have it, but you know, you're allowed to shoot them in Menor to thin that herd, and
In Menor, you're saying, or here?
Menor has a shooting program.
Right, but they had people, I mean, they had all kinds of issues with the deer. It wasn't like one resident called and said, hey, this lady's, you know, my neighbor's feeding deer. There was car accidents, there was all kinds of things that created a nuisance. So for me, I think we have to define nuisance at that point. Because, again, one person having an issue with a neighbor, I don't know if that defines a nuisance. It doesn't to me. It does to her, though, for sure.
Right.
This also might open up a can of worms, not necessarily a can of worms, but once somebody's like, oh, you know what? I have a problem with those deer too. I mean, I have it, but for some reason they went away, but I didn't care. But, yeah, maybe arborvitae's and azaleas, but I guess now they're all gone, or the deer are gone too.
They're over on the street.
Yeah, they're over on Elm Street.
I'm sure that shotgun did anything to do.
We had this issue a few years back with the geese, because I know the Parks and Rec, they were running around chasing geese because of people's complaints. And I'm not sure how that was resolved without legislation still on
It
it.
hasn't been resolved. I don't have the funding to get rid of the geese.
Do you still get a lot of complaints?
I get complaints. I wouldn't say a lot of complaints, but it's not been resolved. And actually, today as I drove through the park, there was somebody who must have put out 4 loaves of bread. There was a ton all over.
So I would consider those possibly nuisance animals also, but we're not doing anything about, you know, anything right now about geese. I don't see the need to do anything about the deer, but I don't know, it's just my opinion.
I think it's on the radar, and we get a lot more points.
Yeah.
We need to address it, but I mean, I do think it is an issue, just.
Nick, Paul, I'd like to jump in. I'd like to ask the law director's opinion and see if there's been any issues in the past about these nuisance animals. Because like Lori said, it is just one resident, but it does look like an awful lot of deer.
Well, I can complain. Because they have Land Drive.
It's
Oh, yeah.
all
Well, actually, we have over on Charlotte Street.
I mean, communities have taken measures, and some communities have taken what would be considered drastic measures in terms of thinning the herd. And, it's probably something I would recommend that the kind of city look into. I mean, I don't know what department would be looking into it. I think Randy would be a good person to look into it, not the deer. Really.
Maybe on somebody's roof.
You know, see what kind of complaints we've been getting, where we've been getting them, what are the issues, and maybe somebody could put together just a brief report to council, so you can start making a determination as to whether in fact they're a nuisance. You know, we can get a definition of nuisance, but I think you have a general idea, you know, when you maybe you can't define it, but when you know when you see it sort of thing. And I think you approach it that way. And plus, while you're looking at it, being often using Recreation Park, I can attest that you're gonna get a lot more complaints about the geese once the Little League season starts going full. Because the kids can't step anywhere without being fouled by goose. So that's my suggestion in terms of that particular subject.
Well, where does this stop? Because I have skunks in my backyard that are spraying,
They're
you
missing out.
know, they're all over the place and they stink it up.
Well,
And those are nuisance animals to
Are you
me.
feeding them?
No, I have a groundhog that's living under my garage. He's a
Bats.
nuisance animal.
Painesville's notorious
Well,
for
I
bats.
think the question is not, so first we would have to define what a nuisance animal is. But the question is not, do we have random critters running around Painesville? It's, do we allow our residents to encourage them to congregate? I mean,
You
am I
mean to feed
wording
them.
that right? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that.
So I think, you know, like in the case of Lori brought up, I think stray cats. You know, there was a time when I reached out and a family member who lives on North State, their neighbor was constantly feeding stray cats to the point that their backyard was actually infested with fleas. Like the grass was infested with fleas. And I had reached out and there was nothing we could do. There was no trap and spay or anything else program at the time. And we didn't have that kind of language in our nuisance ordinance with livestock. You know, the geese, we talked about the geese, the deer now. You know, I think we need to determine if identifying, if we identify that somebody feeding those nuisance animals causes a public health risk, in this situation, it would be the ticks. In the cat situation, it would be the fleas. Whatever for the geese, they're gross. But more importantly, I think the big question is not necessarily defining the nuisance and defining what animals fall under those nuisances, but how are we going to enforce this? You know, I mean, I think it's all well and beautiful to say, well, we're gonna stop everybody from feeding the deer. So then, is this neighbor going to call Painesville City PD and say, I need you to arrest my neighbor because she's feeding the deer? Or can the fire department come out, because my neighbor is allowing, wild cats to procreate in the backyard and they need to come and give a reproductive talk to the cats? I don't know what that looks like. But I think if we're going to go down this hole, we first need to decide, is the enforcement, are we willing to do the enforcement? I think not the question of the definition of what is what, but ultimately, how do we enforce whatever we put in place?
You know, I was at Fripp Island one time, and there the deer get out of your car and give them a carrot. And they are very friendly, and they come up to you, and they feel very safe. And Fripp Island has 3, I think, golf courses on it, and that it's not a nuisance for them to be there. So some of it is also your attitude, and it reminds me of a resident that called me about their neighbor having a fire in their backyard, and that was a nuisance to that woman because the smoke infiltrated her house and she has asthma issues and didn't want to deal with it. But do we limit everybody in the community from having a little backyard barbecue or a little fire pit because this particular person has a neighbor? And that neighbor had come over and warned her that they were going to have the fire. So it kind of goes to that thing too. I get that fires are different than animals, but you know, at what point do we, I mean, this person did a really good job of presenting their issue to council and asking council if this is something that they would consider. So I don't think it behooves us to be inconsiderately not willing to consider it. But I think it takes a lot of investigative research, and that's another question for us. In addition to how we're going to enforce it, is this what we want our city manager and city officials focusing on right now with all the other stuff that we have going on? And I think those are the questions that we should answer before we know if we want to go much further.
Can you talk about how enforcement would go? Do you have any thoughts on this?
You know, we had,
you talked about how far would it go. We really did have someone in Heisley Park. No one in the courtroom, so I won't go right into this. But we had someone in Heisley Park who said their neighbor had a bird feeder and the bird due on their car. They wanted us to prosecute them for having a bird feeder out. So it does get pretty, there does have to be some lines drawn, but you could certainly, probably articulate that. As far as like the deer calls, I'm sure we could find, like men or the volunteers if it came to that, to call them and safely. I'm sure Randy would probably join the call, but in all jokes aside, I'm sure we could probably find that. And then I saw also that, they wrote about the variance in here, and that would be something that planning could probably talk about, fencing and things like that. But as far as, we don't get a lot of complaints, not the police department. Once in a blue moon, a goose complaint, but that's, what you talked about. And we tell them, we can't,
I think people are moving to this municipality, probably don't think it's gonna be a deer issue. If you're out in Leroy, you're more acceptance, so I think it's, if you live in these outer areas like Elm Street or where you live, it's more prevalent, but if you live where Katie is, there's still a chance.
We get deer in our yard. We absolutely do. They come up the hill from our park.
So I guess my question would be,
Where is it? In what I'm hearing is, the questions are, do we want to spend city resources for one resident or for this type of situation? And do we want to put our folks to work and find something like this, or do we want to wait for more complaints? So I guess I kind of like just a feel for how do you, I have no problem going back there and saying, we're just going to sit on this for a while. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, but we've got bigger fish to fry, or?
Well, or maybe we can ask, like we just heard from our chief, maybe the first step is to get some feedback from our city leaders, or administrators and city leaders. Michelle had some good comments to make. Maybe just kind of compile that first. And so put this on old business so that it can come up next time we meet. And then maybe they could be prepared, and not doing like a big in-depth research on anything, but just be prepared to share with us what their experience is. And let her know that, it's not.
Is that how,
I'm just saying.
Well, I have a question, and I don't know if this came up in the discussions about this. Has she spoken to her neighbor?
we talked about that, and at this point, she has not. There is from what I gathered, the situation is there's a little bit of instability next door,
Okay.
and I don't think she wants to go there.
So is this something that perhaps her council person and an at-large member could approach that house and maybe discuss concerns about the management of their backyard wildlife?
Well, but for what reason? We don't have any reason.
I would just say, I have gotten some complaints or some calls about this, and, we just wanted to come over and talk to you about what's going on.
Like we bird feeder.
Because, for every complaint is a story behind the
There's no
complaint.
sides.
And so, I feel like, obviously one person's complaint is not something we dismiss, but at the same time, we need to understand what why the other person is doing it.
This is a little bit like the barking dog.
Yeah.
We had built a few years back.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you can't really make an ordinance as one person complains and nobody talks to the person they're complaining about.
For me, I don't think we're going to be reinventing the wheel here. Communities have been dealing with this for a long time. So I don't know if it's through Valerie or through the police department or something. We just put some feelers out there and, gather a little bit of data and information.
But Jim, my concern is we're gathering data about an issue we don't know both sides about.
Say that again?
So we're gathering information about a problem that one person has spoken to us about without speaking to the other person.
Well, yes and no. We have deer, we have geese, we have cats, we have chickens. There's a variety of different animals. And, you brought up a good point. It's not so much that they're there, but the thing we're dealing with is the people that feed them, and then it becomes let's go for breakfast over on South State Street or North State Street on South. And that would be, I'm curious about that as to, now we know that, you know, Mentor went beyond that and they thinned their herd, so to speak, literally. I'm not in favor of that right now, but I would be curious to hear how other people, the geese down at Rec Park, that is a huge problem. I mean, kids don't want to go out in the outfield and catch a ball or dive for a ball.
I can tell you how to handle the geese. You really need dogs to handle geese.
Yes.
You need, but it's funding, and it's for a good 9 months to have
Yeah,
them there 6 days a week, and they run through there. And the biggest thing is to prevent them from laying their eggs. Once they lay their eggs and they nest there, then they want to come back there every year.
Yeah.
Why, can we do
The shaking of the eggs, we could get an ordinance. I did talk to Ohio Department of Natural Resources, but I also have to have some preventative measure in there, like with the dogs. I need to work with it together, but it's almost $1,000 a month for me to pay to have the dogs there 6 days a week, and I don't have that kind of money.
I have a dog right up the hill, you can take her.
Maybe I'll get the dog park down.
Just-
Let him go.
Can I go back to this resident for a minute? I just want to say that she is a very reasonable individual, it sounds like, and she's even suggested fencing, and she has talked about this deer fencing that is not on our fencing permit list. And so she's curious as to that, if that's something council would consider also, is having that added to our permit list. In addition, I'm wondering if is that something she can get a variance for? Like if you wanted a higher fence than you normally had, or you wanted one that, because what she's saying here is if the deer can't see, then they won't jump. And what she really wants to do is just protect her own property. So could she ask for a variance for that? I mean, that would be a quick solution for her if we would allow it.
Of course, if she asks for variance, it costs her, what, $125 to come before BZA?
That is correct.
But maybe it's worth $125 to her. I mean, does she even know that she has that ability is what I'm asking. And maybe that would be.
The state defines nuisance wild animal as a wild animal that interferes with the use or enjoyment of property, is causing a threat to public safety, or may cause damage or harm to a structure, property, or person. Then it goes on in that same particular section, it talks about a commercial nuisance wild animal control operator. So in essence, if you have a wild animal that is that fits within that category there, is causing harm to your structure, then apparently under the laws of the state of Ohio, you can contact a person who is licensed and have those animals removed from your yard.
And we talked about that, I think before, and determined that we couldn't personally afford one, and that what I believe Rita said, because I've had people call me about raccoons, is that we don't have anybody and there is no one to call. So nobody with a nuisance operator license that we're aware of, but maybe we could advertise for that. Does anybody know anybody? Is there somebody we could, subcontract now and then for these kind of situations? But I do think for her, maybe the fence would be something that would be achievable pretty quickly and help her right away. And she might not mind, if she's willing to pay for the fence, she might be willing to pay for the variance. The other question for council then is that something we would consider adding to our legislation? Because then she wouldn't have to apply for a variance.
And like I said, on top of that's documentation.
Chief would like to make a comment.
Okay.
That is, and I kind of push towards that direction, particularly for Elm Street, because it's not one of the city's main thoroughfares. That fencing is sometimes unsightly in the opinions of many, so that what it might not be, something you'd want to see on Liberty Street per se, or Richmond, but on Elm Street, that might be more reasonable. The other thing, Mentor was able to go to the source of the problem with the deer with the call, and we can contact Mentor, that's not a problem. I would like to do that once I heard about this, reach out to them and find out about the pricing and what kind of staffing and what that required from them. But they were able to go to the source here. We do know that the source of a lot of these deer is that Diamond Shamrock property, and Doug and I attended a meeting recently, and they do not allow any kind of hunting on that property. There's a lot of complications that go with that Diamond Shamrock property, that herd, and and even allowing people onto that property would probably be impermissible and/or, you know, the quality of those deers, as far as culling them, what happens to them after, I think consumption would be off the books. Those are the kind of concerns that they don't have in Mentor with that bird. So those are some extra complicating factors that we have to consider. And if we tried to do something here, and within a short amount of time we moved them off this property, we wouldn't be able to pursue them then onto that Diamond Shamrock property. Mentor was able to probably perform a more successful call because they were able to hit a lot of areas. The area where these deer are probably coming from is off limits to us. So that might be a complicating factor wherein the fence would avoid those kind of problems, you know, logistically.
Well, I probably should stay as a variance because, you know, like you said, you didn't want to ice in the park or an house here. Case by case solution.
I mean, we need to discuss this anymore.
Well, I just like to move to old business so that it can be discussed again next time we meet, rather than just not have it. I'd like to keep it in front of us
Right.
personally.
I would too.
Well, I thought about that.
All right, let's keep this then.
Will I remove it to full business?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we're moving to the old business. Tonight we have a departmental presentation by the fire department. Good evening.
Good evening.
And thank you for being so patient to wait an extra month to hear from me. I'm going to hopefully give you a little view of your fire department through my eyes, which will be hopefully a new angle on things. I've been serving our residents in Panko since 1841. So what do we do? Well, we fight fires. In 2018, we had 72 fire calls, 39 of which were structure fires. We had some cooking fires, a couple chimney fires, car fires. We had actually one boat, one rail car fire, some brush, grass, vegetation fires, a few trash fires, and quite a few excessive heat scorched burn marks, which is usually cooking type fires on a stove top that are out when we get there. But wait, there's more. We also performed 2,765 EMS calls in 2018. In addition to 106 hazardous condition calls like the tree on the house or hazardous material spills. We had 246 false fire alarms last year and 1,088 good service or good intent calls, which can sometimes be open burning complaints, wires down, things of that nature. We do a lot of training. We need to be safe and efficient, and training helps us do that. We had a little over 4,800 man hours of training in 2018, which is an average of a little over 170 per person, or 2 hours per day per man. Do a lot of different training, active shooter, pulling hose lines, doing firefighter training, working with our apparatus, and also practicing auto extrication. We do our best to teach fire safety in our community. We visit our schools every year, hand out pamphlets and flyers, visit with the kids. We reach out to the public, community gatherings and block parties, and we reinforce basic fire safety messages to whoever we speak to. We also do have a lot of tourists that come into the fire station over the course of the year. We do exercise and we try to have fun. Physical fitness is required for all our personnel, and stress relief is very important for first responders. We see a lot of pretty bad stuff on a regular basis, so sometimes when you drive by in the afternoon, you might see the guys out shooting hoops. They're actually getting their physical fitness in for the day. They have a little bit of, during some bad weather, they had their bay pong set up, and they didn't tell me about that ahead of time, which is probably a good thing. So what's a normal day for us at the fire station? We start our shifts at 7:30 in the morning. Between 7:30 and 8, our personnel are on the bay floor checking their vehicles. We have to make sure all their equipment's ready to respond to any call. At 8 o'clock, they wash any vehicles that are left dirty from the day before. So we start the day with nice clean vehicles. From 8:30 to 9, we review our log from the last 2 days and have breakfast. From 9 to 10, we do our daily house chores. We've got 6 or more guys living in the firehouse every day, so you can imagine we have clean bathrooms and floors and kitchen and everything else. And from 10 to noon, we have our scheduled work we have to do. We do Monday routines every Monday. You'll see the guys out on the apron in good weather running the apparatus and all the equipment. Any other assigned duties we might have, we sometimes do training in the morning, tours of public education. try to get our physical fitness in the afternoon. After 5 o'clock, we have dinner, and then any extra assigned duties we have left over from the day that we didn't catch up due to calls. Emergency runs and reporting those runs takes precedence over everything else we do, non-emergency. In 2018, we overlapped, meaning we had 2 squads on calls and not available to respond almost 2,000 times, which is about 46% of the time. So we have less than our full staff in the city or available to respond to calls. Who are we? We have 3 shifts of firefighters, and A shift is what I'm going to start with, because that's usually how that goes. Captain Bob Morosco, Lieutenant Amanda Cardup, firefighter Tom Kaniski is a senior firefighter on A shift, firefighter Chris Young, firefighter Brandon Null, firefighter Chris Cooper, firefighter Brennan Carden, and firefighter Joe Eckhart, who was sworn in January this year. B shift is Fire Captain John East, who's a senior captain on the fire department, Lieutenant Terry Marty, firefighter Jerry Hilly, who's our department's senior firefighter, and he has got just about a year left and he'll be retired. Firefighter Jim Salamosi, firefighter Mike Grubach, firefighter Paul Algier, firefighter Drew Lumberbrock, firefighter Randy Rolfe, and firefighter Ryan Jarrett, who's our department rookie. He was hired in February this year. On C shift, we have Captain Mark Jonovich, Lieutenant Earl Mahoney, firefighter Rob Hendershot, firefighter Willie Horvath, firefighter Jim Nicholson, firefighter Justin Branich, firefighter Steve Tokish, and their rookie is firefighter Kevin Eagles, who's been with us about a year and a half now. We have a couple part-time firefighters. Mark Mulder right now is on leave of absence. He got hired full-time in the city of East Cleveland. I'm hoping after his 90-day leave, he comes back to work for us part-time, but doesn't always work out well. And part-time firefighter Anthony Skinner, myself, my right-hand lady, Leanne Hanslick, I don't know how I get by without her, and Fire Marshal Terry Socko. Some of the things we accomplished in 2018. Capital purchases were pretty light for us in 2018. We did purchase a new chief's vehicle. We had a lot of grant purchases in 2018. We were very fortunate to receive some grants. We got a Bureau of Workers' Comp FEEG grant for barrier hoods and gloves. These are very important items. The fire service has identified that we are at 26% higher risk of cancer than the average American due to the exposure we receive from fire-related chemicals. And these hoods and gloves help reduce that risk for us. It's very important. We were able to purchase a cot loading system for our 3rd squad, which we have them on all 3 squads now. They are a wonderful tool, a back saver. It helped us prevent quite a few injuries to our duty personnel. And almost as important to that is our Lucas devices there, which also we've seen a great increase in our cardiac arrest saves, almost 100% improvement, just because of the nature of the machine, the way it does CPR. We also received a grant from the State Fire Marshal for EMS tablets. A lot of our reporting is electronic, and the tablets allow the firefighters to actually start the report on the call, which saves them time back at the station, that they don't have to be sitting and doing a report. So when they're riding back from the call, they can be working on a report in the ambulance. Some of the other things we got in 2018 was our state EMS grant. We purchased a lot of active shooter gear last year when we had our first active shooter drill at Harvey High School. And we purchased a lot of new gear for that to help keep us safe. And the total of the grant saved us almost $68,000 in 2018. With corporate donations, we purchased 9 Knox boxes for residences. These are a smaller Knox box that we installed either by hanging over a door or it can be screwed to the wall. Residents can apply for them. It's a $20 per year rental fee, and they can keep them as long as they want. We renew the rental every year. And this helps us if they fall, they can't get up, we don't break their door to get in, basically. It's $1,000 if we go through a door with an axe or an Allen tool. We can prevent that and save our our residents' money. We're planning on purchasing 6 more this year. We got all 9 that we purchased last year out with residents. It's a great program for us. We purchased a couple new electric fans in 2018. We purchased a thermal imager, which helps us in firefighting to be able to see through the smoke and find the seat of the fire or possibly find victims. We purchased quite a bit of fire hose last year. We're pretty much up to date on that now. We purchased a portable radio, 7 sets of turnout gear. We're finally getting ahead of the curve a little bit on replacing our turnout gear for our members. Each member has to have 2 sets of turnout gear, because after a fire they wash one. That's a requirement. So they have to have them to be ready to use. And we purchased some technical rescue equipment for our high-end confined space rescue work that we do. All of those purchases were of capital equipment were made with fire levy funds, and no general fund money was used for any of that. So we plan on in 2019, we're purchasing a new ambulance to replace our 2009 ambulance, which is very old, getting pretty worn out, and it's the Ford diesel technology, which tends to grenade after a while, so we're hoping we can get by till we get the new one. Should be due about the middle of the year. It'll look like the other 2 red ones. We have purchased a new fire marshal's vehicle to replace our 2002 Crown Vic, which pretty much rusting into the ground.
Is that what we're getting, a Dodge?
That is the kind of car we're getting. It doesn't look quite like that, but yes, it get a Dodge Charger. I got Dodge Charger all-wheel drive because of the snow. My fire marshal likes a sedan. I wanted to have all-wheel drive. We got a great deal on state bid with that car, so we're very happy with that.
V8.
Yes, it is. We actually got our new Rescue One connector boat in last week. We've had all 3 shifts have had it out in the river while the river was up, practicing with it, training with it, and breaking the new motor in, because it does require some run time to break in. It's a great asset for us in high water situations. It's a very stable platform for rescue victims. And we have received our newest LifePak 15 heart monitor, which we received in March, and that's been put in service already, and it has a lot of new features that the older ones don't have, and we're going to continue to upgrade those as time goes on. And these purchases this year were also all made with fire levy funds. Grant purchases, we've applied for the state grant again this year. We usually apply for this every year and get it, and it's in the $3,000 to $3,500 range. And we use it to purchase durable EMS equipment of various kinds, and we're working to continue to upgrade our active shooter equipment with new and better stuff. I have applied for assistance to firefighters for 2019 to replace our aerial ladder, and I haven't received my rejection letter yet. So I still have my fingers crossed that we're going to get that, but never know. We did place our order for our new air packs from last year's grant that we were awarded, which was a joint purchase grant with Fairport Harbor, Painesville Township, and our Lake Fire Departments, and those are due in the middle of May. So we should have those in service by the end of the month and ready to go with all our brand new air packs. We were able to purchase some new mattresses this year for our dormitories to replace mattresses that were over 10 years old. We purchased a new dishwasher, new clothes dryer, and we are purchasing a new laptop for fire and EMS training. Some of the other goals we have are to work on more and better training for 2019. We were all due for our advanced cardiac life support training and CPR training this year, and that was accomplished on March 27th for all our department members. We're working with our area automatic aid departments to plan more technical rescue training to help with our AMA training that's required for us to do, and also to improve the quality of our training that we get. And also work with our HIT team and fire investigators. The fire investigators do a monthly training, and our HIT team is a county team that we have members that belong to that, and they train monthly as well. We're working on improving our community outreach a little bit as best we can, with being as busy as we are. Touch a truck over at Moreland Library. There's a picture of our aerial spraying water on some kids down in Brentwood last year. And this year, one of the big projects B-Shift took on was we were approached by our YMCA to help train their lifeguards because they have all book training but no practical experience. And I said, who dies in the pool? Not a 16-year-old kid, the 50-year-old fat guy. So we went down, each shift went down and trained with a group of lifeguards at the YMCA. And we actually put 2 of our firefighters in the pool at the time in their clothes. So our firefighters could see what it's like to be in the pool with clothes on, because we might have to do that. And also give the kids a chance to rescue us out of the pool. It was a wonderful experience, and it's actually blossoming into working with Y staff on more first aid type training for them. So we're looking forward to doing more of that as time goes on. Any questions?
I have a question.
Tom?
Now that there's more and more electric vehicles on the road, I know that they can pose a real threat to firefighters when they're in an accident. Are you guys trained on those now?
We have received some training. We're continuing with training all the time. I actually just picked up a nice training, about a 15-minute training for fires in electric vehicles, and actually judicious application of water is the best thing for that. The big problem when we get into those type of vehicles and accidents is cutting into the vehicle with our tools. We have to be very careful with that. We've had guys that have been down to the auto show this year, received a couple hours of training, and brought that back to us to go over with each shift. So we are continually training for those type of emergencies.
Okay, I was just curious because I've even seen on the news where some of the cars, while they're charging, will catch fire and start burning up. So, they seem to be pose a little bit of a hazard.
It's very possible.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question. So the life pack that you showed,
Yes.
I know we were moving towards one, I don't know the correct terminology, but it essentially communicating directly with Lake Health. Is that?
All of our life packs good. And actually, one thing we did this year, we switched our wireless provider from Verizon to AT&T FirstNet, which is a first responder priority network. And with that change, we purchased new modems for all our life packs, and they do transmit the EKGs electronically right to Lake Health system. And the nice thing about the new monitor is it has actually carbon monoxide detection built into it. So if someone, we used it for the first time, we had a carbon monoxide poisoning, we were able to identify the amount of carbon monoxide in the person's bloodstream. So we were able to get that information quickly to the hospital for their treatment as well. So there's a lot of neat technology out there right now that we're getting involved with.
You mentioned that there were quite a few times, it might have been 2000 or something of that nature, that both of our units were in service, and there was another call that came in.
Yes, when we have
And how's that handled?
two calls for service at one time, we have 6 people on duty. So a minimum of 2 go on the ambulance to the hospital. If it's a bad call or we go to Lake West with a heart attack, we will send 3. So 2 go, the third one comes back with a vehicle, so we have him available to go to the next call. Next call goes, 3 guys go to that. If 2 go to the hospital, it leaves me 2 in town. If there's a third call during that time, my 2 guys that are left will go to that call with a fire engine or another vehicle with equipment on it that they can first respond to medical emergency. And then we call mutual aid at that point. We received mutual aid about 135 times last year altogether.
Has there been many times where you've called for mutual aid and they're busy?
We have never failed to receive mutual aid for a call. Occasionally, another department will be too busy to help us, and we just reach out to the next one. But the good thing about us is we're surrounded by Painesville Township, who has 3 three-man stations all around us, and they are usually able to send us one squad right away. We're working closer with Grand River and Fairport as well to help them out, and they help us out. Concord can bring us a squad from the south end. They have 2 stations. So we're pretty lucky in that event. We haven't had a lot of times where we've never had a time where we've not received help when we needed it.
One more question, and then I'll quit. Response time, how has that been going?
Our response time is, we're at about a 78% compliance with NFPA response times right now, and the biggest part of that issue is the west end of town. Because of distance, it's very hard for us to get there as quickly as we need to. But for about 78% of our calls, we're under 5 minutes response time.
Okay. Lori?
For the mutual aid, do you use 911, or do you make the call, does somebody from the department make the call?
For-
Or mutual, when you need mutual?
No, that's our officer in charge. We're working with right now, with our Lake Central Dispatch, we're developing a run card system in this end of the county, which is all, there's 7 east end departments. And these run cards are built by each department, so if I get a squad call, it sends my squad. If I get a second squad call, it sends my second squad. If I get a third squad call downtown, the run card looks and says, okay, both Painesville squads are busy, then it sends the squad I designate Painesville Township Station to, let's say. It will automatically dispatch them, it won't even ask me when this is in the very early stages right now, but in the future it'll be a little quicker. Right now, they call us and say, you got a third call at here, we say, okay, send me so-and-so. But that's my officer in charge that does that.
I lied, I have one more question. Well, there was some conversations, I think during the winter time when there were some power outages, about trying to establish like a crisis center or warming stations or things like that.
Yes.
I was just curious as to how those conversations are going.
We have had conversations with Monica about where we have warming centers in the area, and those are constantly changing and fluctuating. And we don't have a lot of after hours. Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, we're pretty well set up on places. Outside of that, we have a problem. Jeff McHugh and I have been in the very early discussions of, number one, coming up with a notification plan for our power customers when power is going to be out, what they should do, where they should go. And I also talked with Michelle and Jeff about possibly using Morse Avenue for a warming center because it has generated power, but it's a very small facility and we can't get a lot of people in there. And so there are issues that we're trying to come up with good answers for. We haven't had a lot of success at this point.
Okay. Christine?
I'm good.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and effort.
Administrative report, water, city manager.
Just remind people that yard waste can be put out on their recycling day, so yard waste day is recycling day as well. You may have seen the fence go up this morning along North Park Place. North Park Place will be closed for the next 2 months for a transportation and streetscape improvement project. And they anticipate being open prior to a party in the park. And obviously, heartfelt condolences go out to the Wagner family and the police department.
Thank you. Clerk of Council, correspondence.
The next regular council meeting will be held Monday, May 20th at 7:30. The upcoming First Fridays event is Friday, June 7th. The event is Beer, Brats, and Bros, and will be held on Main Street. The farmers market starts May 23rd and runs every Thursday through October 10th, noon to 4. The car cruise starts May 24th and runs every Friday through September 27th, 5 to 9. Party on Main is May 16th from 6 to 10 on Main Street. Ace Muller will be playing. The Memorial Day Parade is May 27th at 10 a.m. It starts at Riverside Cemetery. That's it.
Thank you. Closing comments, Nick?
I'd like to congratulate and thank Ed for his appointment and interest in the safety committee. I would also like to also extend my condolences and thoughts and prayers out to the Wagner family, as well as thoughts and prayers out to the police department and the fire department as well. And then on a happier note, the police department is putting together a family fun day, Saturday, May 18th. It would be from 12 to 2, and it's under the underpass area at the safety center.
Thank you. Jim?
I'm good.
Well, Christine?
I'm good.
Lori?
I just would share that it was a busy weekend this weekend with events in the city. Nice to be out in the rain at the kids' garage sale. It still went. I've got to give our rec department some credit for still following through with it. I know it was wet and kind of cold, and there was still a pretty good amount of people there with tables, so that was nice to see. One of the things I also did was I attended the NAACP Youth Council meeting, and that was held actually at the Starfish and Coffee. And Bethany has been really good about hosting events there. But the interesting thing, and this kind of ties into what Mr. Fodor was talking about as far as our warming center, and I know we talked as a council about having some kind of community center. But the kids there, that was one of their big conversations, was about not having much to do at their age in the city and the need for some type of community center. They actually, I got the opportunity to ask them, you know, hey, we've tried this in the past. I know when I was at Harvey, we did a big, thing where we got all the kids together to get their opinions on it. So I just thought I would take a minute to share with council how they said a youth center would work for them, what they would need to make it work. Because I said, how do we keep the guns and drugs out and not have adult supervision, which you guys don't seem to like? How does that work? And they were really good. And here's things that they said. They said that they thought that you had to have a engaging staff, a friendly and engaging staff. You needed to start when kids were young, which I know we already do, but having a community center of some sort that they go on. They have to be able to, we have to be able to trust them and have an open door policy. They thought we should deputize the other kids or other teenagers or whatever you want to call them to be accountable and responsible there. And things like keeping it clean and stuff, these kids would be responsible for going through the cleanliness of it. That they needed some responsibility for this facility so that they felt that they had a sense of belonging. And then they said they have to have food, which I figured that was one. That the cost had to be minimal or affordable at least, maybe some generation from the community, and not too much structure for study, but how to help them prepare for the future in the world of work and careers. So I can send that list out to somebody if they want it, but I thought it was really good and very, very engaging. I too sent out my condolences to the Wagner family, particularly Terry. She grew up next door to me, and I miss the days when graham crackers could fix just about anything. So my love and heartfelt sympathy for them.
Katie?
So a couple things. Let's remember school lets out about 3 weeks, so early this year. And I believe Painesville Recreation Department is still taking registrations for summer camp. I know Oliver will be there this year with his friend Edison. I want to welcome Samantha. I don't know her last name. We have a new female officer, Samantha.
Oh, Stephanie Kleinstorch.
Stephanie, thank you, Kleinstorch. I was like, I couldn't find the post about it. We swore in a female officer earlier this week, or end of last week, to our Painesville City Police Department. Obviously, my condolences are with Mark Wagner's family, as well as John Cody's family, who also passed unexpectedly. And I just wanted to share, working in mental health, I have to put this out there every so often that if you or a loved one is in crisis, please do not hesitate to pick up the phone. Locally, we have a crisis hotline, which is 440-953-TALK or 8255. Nationally, if you don't want to accidentally get somebody you may know, it's 1-800-273-8255. And if you don't want to talk to anybody at all, you can text 741-741. And somebody will help talk to you through whatever may be going on. Hopefully, if everybody can share that number with anybody they know, we can save a couple lives. That's it for me.
Well, I think pretty much everything's been said this evening, but ditto on everything. And certainly my condolences to Lieutenant Wagner's family and our police department for a great loss. And that's all.
Thank you. Well, the only thing I can really add now is that I wish the best to Jimmy's employees from Jimmy's restaurant in Painesville. They had a nice run. I know it was one of my favorite breakfast places in Painesville. I just wish all of them and the best in the future, and at this time, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.